No, about the Israeli Prime Minister. I can't say his name. Who was the Israeli
I
Prime
think you
Minister?
were telling me about it.
Yeah.
Not.
Oh, wait.
Is that Netanyahu?
Yes.
Yeah.
How'd you get that name down?
It's kind of a weird name. Netanyahu. I mean, Yahoo's easy.
We're ready.
All right, it is 6:04. We'll call to order the special meeting of the Wellderry 5J Board of Education to order. Jessica, would you please call roll?
Monica Johnson,
Here.
Amanda Proctor.
Here.
Nate Sisano.
Here.
Jeremy Scott.
Here.
Michael Wales.
Here. We do need to approve the agenda for this evening's meeting.
Allegiance.
We don't typically do them during special meetings, but I said we typically don't do different special meetings, but we can. If you would, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we do need to approve our agenda for this evening. Go ahead and move that we approve the agenda for the evening. Second. I have a second by Vice President Sisano to approve the agenda. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, for our first item of business, I move that we go into an executive session pursuant to section 24-6-402-213 of the Colorado Revised Statutes for the purpose of instructing personnel and representatives to begin contract negotiations with one or more of our candidates, including the necessary process to prioritize for the purposes of negotiations. One or more final interpublic forums have been completed. We'll also be including Dr. Randy Zila as part of that executive session. Second. I have a motion by myself to enter executive session and a second by Reverend Scott. Any discussion on the motion? None. Jessica, would you please pull the board?
Monica Johnson,
Yes.
Amanda Proctor.
Yes.
Nate Sisano.
Yes.
Jeremy Scott.
Yes.
Michael Wales.
So at this time, we will recess out of the regular session and go into executive session. So if anybody has already tuned in, stay tuned. We will return to the boardroom following the executive session. We're good, okay. So it's 6:44, we'll come back to the regular session, and we'll move on to our next agenda item. So after conducting a nationwide search for the next superintendent of the Weld-RE 5J School District, in which we had 32 applicants, the Board of Education narrowed the candidates down to 4 semifinalists over a series of 2 rounds. And those are, in no particular order, Mrs. Diana Jones, who is currently at the Alamosa School District, Mr. Sheldon Rosenkrantz, who is with the Colorado Department of Education, Mr. Scott Nielsen from the Poudre School District, Mr. Chad Auer from the Wyoming Department of Education. And so last week, we invited those 4 finalists to our district for a series of interviews and tours, excuse me, with our students, our staff, members of our community, and members of our administration team, and of course the Board of Education. We concluded that with a very long day for them on Saturday, where they went through a marathon interview rounds. And so we are now at a point where we would like to discuss and hopefully name a finalist. And so why don't we start just with some open board discussion. Let's kind of keep our comments right now focused with Miss Diana Jones. And it's open floor to whoever wants to.
Well, I'll start us off. I mean, a general comment about the pool is I'm spoiled for choice on this one. And one of the challenges I had for each of the candidates was I could see a scenario in which each of them could be successful here, and especially either now or previously or maybe in the future, or whatever. So I'm grateful for that. I really enjoyed spending time with Dan, especially in the LOL interviews that we did. She fielded some tough questions and did it well, and so I appreciated that, and the way that she interacted with the public at that meeting was strong, and it came off as very relational and personable. And of course, that's a high value in our just that relational and personable. So I really, that was something that was a standout thing for me, I'll say.
Yes, I'll say about our candidate, Diana Jones. I feel like she is a really good collaborator. I feel like she would work well in teams, and that she would be a good communicator too. She seemed to have a very distinctive personal communication ability where people would trust in her and her abilities.
Yeah, I believe it's Dr. Jones, actually. So just to put that out there.
I think you're right.
She, again, at the meet and greet at LL especially, I felt like she was really personable. People seemed to interact with her well. She listened to concerns and questions very well. I was really impressed with her experience, especially in Oklahoma. She had quite a bit of additional experience as an assistant superintendent leading a district through some challenging changes in her district. So I was really impressed with her overall, and thought she would be a really good, like I said, good communicator, good listener, and really good, kind of personable. That's what I read. All the comments on our cards were she was very personable. So.
I mean, I'll echo what you guys said. The other thing I really thought was one of her strengths was that she was systems oriented. Like, she really appreciated process and procedure, and I know how important that can be in a district, and especially from a leadership standpoint of doing things consistently.
So for me, everything that's always already been said here, she came to us with a tremendous amount of experience, very strong educational leadership background, and I think you guys all said it. My notes actually say, I have it twice here, and I even put myself a little side note like, yeah, you actually wrote this twice. That she's people focused and really supportive. Doesn't like to micromanage. That's always a positive thing to hear at that level anyways, is that Amanda mentioned that she's kind of systems driven, and one of the things she talked about was being able to be a cheerleader and being able to see a vision and having the ability then to chunk that vision out into actionable steps for a team to be able to prioritize. I absolutely loved her entry plan, and I love that she added her core beliefs to her entry plan. And the biggest one was, dignity and respect, that all people, regardless of the situation, deserve to be treated with respect. And I think that is one of the things that our current superintendent models so well. And so seeing an applicant that had that as their core set of beliefs was one of those things that really kind of put my mind at ease about how do we begin to replace this wonderful woman that's sitting with us here today. So those are the things that I really like about Diana. Let's move on and have some discussion about Mr. Rosencrantz.
I'll start with Mr. Rosencrantz. I found him extremely capable and knowledgeable, so qualified, and I just felt that he emanated a certain amount of leadership trust. And I was so impressed with those qualities. Is after our site interviews, I thought this man would make a great leader. He just emanated that amount of trust. So I was very impressed with that.
Yeah, I appreciated, I think one of his biggest strengths is actually his knowledge of how CDE works and his network connections, because that's part of playing the game of understanding the players and the rule book. I think that was one of his biggest strengths, since he's an insider coming back, wanting to come back out. I also appreciate that when he talked about the student body, it felt like he was talking about from the kindergartner to the 12th grader, and I feel like that's really important to talk about the student body as whole to bigs. And I agree, I think he would be an extremely capable leader.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. Sheldon has a ton of experience that, as a superintendent, I think that could be very helpful for us. So, yeah, I don't know how else to say it. He's got a ton of experience that I think would be very helpful for us. So, yeah, very, very good candidate.
I really, I appreciated his candor. I think especially in our interview, which technically was an open meeting. So, I thought he was candid about, probably more so than most would be, in a very genuine feeling way. He's obviously been, intentionally reflective about where he's been, where he wants to go, the road and the path from there, the good and the bad. So that's not always what people are willing to do. So that just left me a level of comfort and trust. But I'm like, realized that I'm like, this is someone that is definitely presents as trustworthy, which is not a judgment I'm usually prone to make.
For me, one of the things that I saw with him and heard repeatedly was developing collective efficacy across all areas of the district. He mentioned something, and I was actually keeping a separate set of notes that I would just want to hang on to for all kinds of things during his interview, because his interview, there was so much depth to it. But he was talking about the positive toxicity and or toxic positivity. I think, I can't remember which way he said it, but essentially it's toxic positivity, which I thought was very interesting. And I don't think you see that unless you have a lot of experience, because it's one thing to go out and talk about all the positive things you're doing, ignore all the things that are going wrong. And he was essentially saying, like, don't let that undermine you. He recognizes that this role isn't about him as an individual. This is about him doing everything in his power to provide support to the staff and the students. And he was, I heard that coming out in so many of his answers, that this role was about always providing the supports. And the other thing that I really loved that he talked about was just developing a culture of high standards and the expectations to meet those standards. And I think that's awesome because if you remember in that, he was talking about that is not just for staff, that's just not for students, that's for the community as a whole. That as a school district, we aim for a culture of higher standards and expectations. Let's move on to Mr. Scott Nielsen.
I'll start. I thought one of his strengths is he seemed very flexible in his leadership style, which is nice because it allows a leader to lean into the individual versus having the individual conform to his style, which I think is great when you're being a leader in a position like this. And I also thought he was really focused on detail and data-backed decisions and not letting the emotion of the moment take over, but by using data to show the story and to be an indicator of the action plan. And that's not a quality at a level a lot of people are able to do, is to see the story within the numbers.
What I really liked about Scott Nielsen as one of our candidates was he was so student driven. And for him, everything came back to the education of students. And time after time in our interviews, he would phrase, we would go back to the students, go back to the students. The students are why we are here. Educating our kids is why we were here. And I was so impressed that he put the students at the very top of his priority. That was so refreshing to hear. I was also impressed with his data-driven leadership style, that he assesses the data, he looks at the data, he makes decisions based on that, and he'll go back to that. So that he would be a leader that wouldn't make rash decisions, that he would take the time to explore options, to explore data before he would proceed. And he was very personable. I felt like he could really form a good connection, that he's passionate about learning. So he was an excellent candidate.
Yep. I agree. He was, I think, the only one in his interview who actually mentioned working with you, Ms. Trussell. So that's helpful to me, someone who is willing to learn from you and what our district needs and wants. Scott had a ton of experience as well that I think could be really helpful to our district. He talked a lot about listening to learn was how he phrased it. He talked a lot about shining sunshine on people and kind of stepping back from the spotlight and letting staff, students, teachers, whoever, kind of take the sunshine for an effort. So I thought that could be really helpful in our district as well. You're both right. The student focus was very clear. The data-driven decision making was very clear, and I think Scott would be an asset to the district as well.
Well, I think I agree with everything you guys said. The way in which leaders go about, handing out credit and all that, and was really important to me, and I loved hearing that. I loved hearing how important that is to him to make sure that we are shining a light on those who are doing the work and making sure that those who are succeeding are getting credit for succeeding. I would say that the one thing that, besides all the stuff you guys said, that I found interesting was from the beginning on Thursday, when we first met him at dinner and sat with him, it was clear he already had, he does homework. He already knew who we were. And we asked really good questions. And then on the candidate interviews on Friday, when I sat in, he was talking about things that we had talked about at the dinner the night before. So he was assimilating that information. in as we went. And then during our interview, he was talking about things that happened at the thing before, or at the meet and greet Elwell, and the bus driver that drove him around and all of that, and the level of interest and excitement about us, right? That we are something that he obviously and truly finds really exciting, a place to be. And sometimes you just like somebody who's also excited about you. I mean, I think we're an exciting place. And I think he really properly identified, had it for, not knowing us and not having, experience with us outside of this process. He seemed to handle on us that I agreed with very quickly. So.
I'll go back to what I heard say in the candidate meet and greets. He was talking about having a passion to connect the student's passion with learning somehow. And he talked about kids on the fringe, or kids who were a little disengaged, not our center of the bell curve kids. And so what is it that brings them back into the classroom? What is it that gives them a desire to be there on a daily basis and at least experience education somehow? And it was just interesting. And he talked about that, that the passion of finding that independent students, how that would work. And that was pretty cool. He obviously has a lot of experience and a passion for special ed, which is commonly overlooked in this. And I loved how he talked about getting everybody at grade level, and part of that would be how do we bring our staff, how do the skill sets in our staff to work with special ed in the classroom at grade level, so that everybody, and he said that later on, that all means all. It's not, all doesn't mean most, all means all. And so how do we move forward with that? And again, his student focus, one of the little quotes I wrote down from him was, some of the most difficult decisions he's had to make is taking care of adult humans who are in service of student outcomes. That sometimes we put the adult humans' needs before student outcomes, and there's a balance there, and that's the difficult part of this job. I already said that as well. I loved that his mind goes to this place where, when we talked to him about what are some of the challenges he may face in this district, and one of his responses to that was he needs to take advantage of the new guy in the district situation.
Mhm.
So he needs to take advantage of, hey, I'm the new guy, so I don't know anything, tell me, show me how to do this. And I thought that is because as being the top dog, it could be easy also to step in and say, you can't show me anything. And again, I think that's something that you've done really well, is you've taken advantage of being the new gal in the district. And maybe you didn't take advantage of it, but you definitely utilize that to the benefit of everybody, yourself included. So when he said that, the first thing I thought of was you, and I thought, she's smarter than she let me on to believe. She knew what she was doing there. So. And I loved his, we had the opportunity to ask all applicants if they had any questions for us, and his question for us was, how will you know if you made the right decision? Which again was pretty insightful for somebody who's gunning for the job. So we can now move on to Mr. Auer.
I'll start again. I appreciated his candor and humility, especially during our Saturday interview. He was very open about being non-traditional and the pathway through this. And I appreciate him looking at that and even leaning into saying, I've never done some of these things, but I Googled it. And I can appreciate someone who has critical thinking, who's willing to look outside the box and look at other people as examples versus him putting something together that he felt was right that maybe wouldn't be right or on par of what we should be. And I appreciate, the other thing that I really liked is his very global viewpoint on how the school district is situated within politicalness, if you will, of like to different elected officials and having them up at things. And I appreciate that as well, because I think sometimes we don't do that enough to spread our goodwill outside of our community and to see how our community is connected to the other communities and those elected officials and those people. I mean, our students move outside of this area. And so talking to elected officials and others, I think actually plays into the broader puzzle piece versus our local ecosystem as well.
Yes, I was impressed too with, he has a very different but diverse working background in regards to education, and being a non-traditional candidate, he has had really cool experience. One thing that stood out to me is he worked with the Wind River Reservation and with the special needs that were presented there. And I think that is such a valuable asset to have. I liked that he had experience in a Title I school and that he volunteered to do that. He wanted to have that experience. He wanted to go into a difficult educational workplace to see if he could make a difference. So I was really impressed with his willingness to tackle on more difficult, diverse working situations with a positive attitude.
I appreciate it very much. I think it's a gift to us to have a non-traditional candidate in there, because it just opens up, it kind of expands our minds for what's possible. And his interactions with the community at Elwell were, top notch. I think I happened to be in there when he got asked some pretty hard questions. And he owned up, not only, was willing to say, what he knew and also know where maybe his experience will let him down, but also was able to articulate a plan for how he was going to get there, right? And he would acknowledge the concern and be like, and this is the way I would go about overcoming that. And that's for me one of the most important things. Nobody knows everything. The big problem is, can you problem solve and can you get through it? And his diverse experiences shows that he can definitely do that. Very adaptable. It's one thing to have a diverse set of backgrounds, so I think to be successful in that diversity of things. I think looking at his references and the different places they come from, he was successful in many different divergent areas, and so that left me with a good feeling that where he wasn't, he wouldn't hide from the places he wasn't maybe as prepared as a traditional candidate would be, and would also be open to figuring out how to get where he needs to go.
Yeah, I think it's clear what one of the things that drew us to Mr. Auer was his diverse background, and how that might play in with our district. I think was intriguing. He talked a lot about having the courage to set high expectations, both for staff and for students, and holding kids to that when it's not always popular. Kids, he referred to kids, but staff too. And then to do that, you have to hold yourself accountable first, be genuine about your conversations. I think he, as we've talked about, he's still around. He's very personal, and he has a demeanor about him that sets people at ease, I think. I think you well said, he has an ability to make you feel like you're the most important person in the room. And that's a good thing, that he's listening, he is very engaged with those folks. And I think that could be a skill that's really helpful in our district. Again, his diverse experience, I think, could be a benefit. And I think our staff in the district could be to support him where he might be lacking in that diverse experience. So I think he was a good candidate as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Maya Angelou saying about, it's not what they've done, it's how they made you feel. And I think he does a great job of that. And even reading the student cards, you can kind of pick that up a little bit too, that they felt like it was about them and not him. Yeah, what an incredible background. I loved his frankness though, when we actually sat down and interviewed him, one of the first things that came out of it was that he wasn't sure that he was equipped to actually take on this role. And I think that takes a lot of courage to open up an hour-long interview by saying, I might not be the guy, but I want to try. And so that again, that's one of the things he talked about in his strengths, and I think that was very apparent is his candor. I love the fact that he's an attorney. I mean, it's always nice to have. We can do kind of a 2-for-1 with salary there. We can save a little money. It's kind of an important thing. So I really enjoyed my time with Chad at the dinner. I felt like as the current sitting president of the board, he is somebody that I could get along with very well. We could do crepes just as good as.
Oh,
We still got to keep crepes on the schedule. I'm rewriting my calendar for all this, but okay. Well, I don't know if there's anything else anybody wants to add. I'd like to again thank everybody who participated in the interview process, who stepped forward, who took time out of their Saturday on a busy St. Patrick's Day weekend and March Madness weekend to be in service to the school district. And serve on those interview teams. That's an amazing thing to do, and the feedback that is invaluable. I mean, it truly is. And same with our student ambassadors and our bus drivers, who on Thursday.
Mhm.
Yeah, took each candidate to tour each school, drove them around, and of course, our own Jessica and Dr. Zila, thank you so much for everything that you guys have been doing leading up to this, and the work that you guys did this weekend. I'm so appreciative. I felt like I failed you guys by not being there to help you with the things, but you had it all under control. So I
Jessica had it.
she's
all.
the one-
She did.
She really did. So thank you so much.
I just want to add my thanks, especially to Mr. Zila for the process. You kind of come in, we go through the resumes and those kind of things, and you kind of develop a ranking in your mind. And then we had the dinner, and things started to shift a little bit. Then we had the open house, and things started to shift a little bit. And each one of those, I learned something important. So thank you for the process. I think it was going on to work for something this important. And with that, I would like to move that we select Scott Nelson as the next Weld RE5J superintendent, subject to successful contract negotiations.
I'll second.
So I have a motion by Reverend Scott, a second by Director Johnson to select Scott Nielsen as the next superintendent for the Weld RE5J School District. Any discussion on the motion? I would just add, I think we had a good feel of this, and Scott checks a lot of boxes for the school district. Lots of positive feedback. So
I want to say thank you to Ms. Superintendent Trussler. You set the bar so high that at the beginning of this process, I wasn't sure anybody was going to be able to hurdle it. Like, I was like, we may just be wasting everybody's time, and we might just have to chain you to your desk. How much crime is that? I don't know. But I mean, it really, truly, I mean, that you were the measuring stick for this entire process throughout the process. So thank you for setting the bar that high, for doing all that you've done for us here. And encouraging us and supporting us and in this process as well. It's been. I don't want to say goodbye. I'm glad that I'm looking forward to saying hello to Scott. I do not want to say goodbye.
It has definitely been a teamwork effort, and I am grateful to be able to be part of this community and to have you as members. Better stop.
Yep, let's not make this all sappy now.
Yeah, I'm feeling like I'm tearing up already, so I'll just say my thank you too. This is a better community because of the leadership that you've demonstrated here, and it is felt community-wide. So I'm gonna stop because I am a little teary.
Well, I'm not gonna do that because we still have some more time on our clock.
Yeah, well-
so
That's right,
we
that's
got
right.
time. I'm not doing this today.
6 more board meetings.
But
Who's counting?
You still have enough to do, lady. You're not out of the woods yet.
I know, we have
Yeah.
a busy next
We
few
got a
months.
whole quarter left. Come on.
Yes, we do.
Any other discussion?
Just excited to see Scott come on board.
Mhm.
Yes.
All right. Jessica, will you please board?
Monica Johnson,
Yes.
Amanda Proctor,
Yes.
Nate Fasano,
Yes.
Jeremy Scott,
Yes.
Michael Whale.
Yes. Yes, we can. So I'll just add that Mr. Nielsen, he does bring 27 years of experience in education to the district. He has a strong background in special education, student-connected learning, and post-secondary readiness, with an emphasis on work-based learning, concurrent enrollment, and career technical education. So a very strong fit for the vision and direction that we want to take this district. I'm also excited for him and you and he to begin working together.
We spent an hour at New Roosevelt going through that building, and he is comfortable talking about instruction. Wonderful to converse with on student needs and supporting teachers. This is an exciting time for 5J. As much as I hate to leave, I am excited to have Mr. Nielsen here. So, it's good. And he brought his own hard hat.
Sellers already. All right. So yeah, as this motion stated, so the next phase is we will begin a contract negotiation with Mr. Nielsen, and hopefully have him signed as our next superintendent. Any other items that you guys want to discuss? I know we got to be careful, it's a special meeting, so we have to stay within the bounds of our agenda, but any other items that? All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn at 7:17. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wales.
I'm gonna go turn the bell.
Oh, less patient than I came.
Yeah.